Welcome back, everyone, to the Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and shortly we will be starting our next episode. We will be providing you tools, resources, and information that you can use to make your life just a little bit better. But before we do that, let's honor our country, and then we'll begin the podcast. Welcome back, everyone. This is Brad Richard, the host of Men on a Mission podcast. I want to thank all of you for joining us again for episode 50. Episode 50 brings back memories of my book, Man at 50. So this is kind of a special episode. It is episode 50. And tonight I have a special guest all the way across the pond, actually a couple ponds. He is from Australia, and his name is Dr. Christian Heim, and he's my guest for tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Heim. He is an award-winning psychiatrist, music professor, and a Churchill Fellow. During his 20 years as a doctor, 13 as a psychiatrist, he has heard the stories of thousands of people, combining science, entertainment, and large doses of Australian humor. He speaks from a place of deep compassion and authority on mental health issues that are affecting us all in this new normal. Anxiety, depression, addiction, personality issues, trauma, suicide, and relationship breakdown. His latest book, The 7 Love Types, Navigating Love in a Fractured World, has just been released. So that is an opening bio for my guest. And Christian, I want to welcome you to the show. I welcome you to the podcast. All the way
Brad,
from Australia.
Yeah. Australia seems a long way away, but thanks to our technology, it actually isn't. The world is getting smaller in some ways, but it's a real privilege for me to be here, Brad. I've been looking at your website and seeing some of the work that you do, and we're here to help other people get through this crazy thing called life, and that's what we're here about tonight.
Absolutely. There are so many areas that you have dealt with in your career, very long career, and the Men on a Mission podcast is about U.S. veterans and men and women and their families. And just tell the listeners a little bit about what you do now and kind of what brought you to, your current mission, and what you're working on currently.
Okay. Just before I do that, I want to put the work that I've done with veterans into context, because in my role as a psychiatrist, as a private psychiatrist, most of all of that time has been spent with veterans, with people who've experienced trauma. For men in particular, that means combat trauma. That means trauma associated with service. And so this whole world of what it means to be a soldier or part of the Navy or part of the Air Force or just part of defending your country has been a new experience for me. And that's actually been a wonderful insight into another aspect of this this life that we all sort of have. So a big part of my life has to do with trauma and combat trauma. And yeah, that's sort of my subspecialty. Now I've moved to a place where, due to the coronavirus crisis that we're all going through, a lot of my work is online. But I also work for smaller hospitals because, Brad, what I like is people. I like people contact, all right? I like to see the same people every day and smile. And that's kind of become more precious to all of us. Don't you find, Brad, that during this crisis time that we're really finding how important people are?
Yeah, it's a connection that when you take that away from people, yeah, I mean they feel kind of lost. In the military, connecting with your fellow soldiers is a survival technique, and it is a security blanket. And so without that connection, it's really difficult to function on your own. So
in fact, it's amazing. I mean, yes, it is a survival technique because we all actually need each other to survive. But a lot of the vets that I've worked with let me know that their time of service was the most important time of their life because they made such great connections with people. They had such great friends. It felt good to be a human being working alongside other people that quite literally you would die for. That's how important it was.
Well said. I've said almost those same words in previous episodes.
Yeah.
You know, how it's so important. That is a contributing factor in so many lives of veterans after they're separated.
Yeah.
They are missing a huge part of themselves when they come back into civilian world, which is more me centered, me.
Yes, it is.
Everyone has an individual mission, not a group mission.
And that's sorry, Brad. I just want to pick up on what you said there because with the coronavirus crisis that we're in, it really is like a war situation that we are at war with the virus. And so we've actually got a lot to learn from people who know how to band together as soldiers on the one side and support each other through this coronavirus crisis because we're actually battling an enemy.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That just was spot on. That was so good. The way that you put that together. I kind of look at the situation with the coronavirus and the challenges that we're having here in the U.S. I've called for, I've kind of put the seed out there to come up with a national mission statement. Specifically, for veterans that they can sign on to and be part of a national mission to help their cities and their counties and their states and to help other veterans. That whole thing just kind of ties in there. There was like a perfect opening, for that. Now, it does. When you say that you've worked with veterans, what type of traumas or what type of situations did you come in contact with? And if you can share like some of the results or some of the more difficult, situations that you came across.
Yeah. Okay. So most of my professional career as a psychiatrist has been as a private psychiatrist in general adult psychiatry. Now, but I was affiliated with a hospital that had a very strong trauma program, okay, where vets from firstly Vietnam and more recently from Afghanistan would be put through a whole course, basically dealing with all the problems that vets have to deal with, because it's not easy, as you know, Brad, okay? And the great part of that was a group therapy dynamic, okay, where people would get together and help each other out, to share insights, to get other people that feeling, you know what, you're not alone in this. Because before we started, Brad, you were telling us about how many vets you are losing to suicide every day in the United States. And that's very saddening, you know. And here in Australia, we have lost 10 times the number of vets to suicide than we lost during the whole of the Afghanistan conflict, okay? So something's going wrong, right? But as a psychiatrist, I would then work one-on-one with somebody, and we would work through what needed to be worked through so that we could process all the emotions that have to do with the combat trauma, okay, or any other trauma, quite frankly. And as you know, a lot of vets keep these traumas locked deep inside because who wants to talk about them, right?
Right.
But while they're affecting your relationships, your relationship with alcohol, the anger that comes up in you, right, and your feeling of self-worth, right, it's like a boil that's full of pus. You sort of got to get in there, get it all out, clean it all up so that the damn thing can heal.
Right.
And I've loved to see it because I have seen it heal. And there are a lot of vets that go through that healing process and go, oh my God, I can actually have a normal life now, you know, or more of a normal life. It all depends on how severe the trauma is.
Mm-hmm. Do you think when it comes to veterans, do you think that a group therapy is a better model for them than one-on-one?
Well, it's kind of not an either or. It's actually both. Okay, and the other question that I get is it better to have a talking therapy or to use medication? And it's sort of like there's not a rule. You use both. You use whatever works, whatever helps. All right. So I will use medications. I will do one-on-one talking therapy. I will encourage people to go to groups. And it's all got its role to play. And the other thing is the partners of veterans as well, all right? They have their needs. They've got to be understood. And sometimes when I first meet somebody, this happens often, all right? The first thing that needs to be rescued is actually their relationship, all right? Because somebody's on the verge of leaving them, and you understand why. And the thing is, you can't sort of wait a couple of years before we've got anger or drinking under control. You've got to save the relationship. So sometimes I will go straight into relationship work. It really all depends on which, on the thing that each individual person needs. So Brad, I'd say to you, it's all helpful, and we all do what helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. Just looking at the group therapy. I know generally speaking, veterans work better as a group. You know, there's no I in team, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And so,
that's right. Yeah.
So I mean, they tend to work better, and with vets, at least the vets that I've encountered and that I've served with, if there's something that needs to be done, it needs to be put in front of them as something to defeat or conquer, or it has to be put to them in the form of a task.
That's exactly right.
You know, with a starting point and an ending point. And did you see that as far as when you worked with individual vets? Did you kind of put them on a personal mission, you know, and they to work on themselves and to get themselves better? And so they had something to work on, went along with their personality, I guess.
Oh yeah. Now the thing is, like you talked about the group situation and how there's no I in team, and you're exactly right. And the thing is about soldiering is you work as a team. Okay, you work well together. So a group situation is just ideal because you're catering to the strengths of people who did work together at a vital time of their life when they needed to work together, and they know what working together is all about. And for me, the real gold in group therapy is the Me Too experience. Somebody sharing something that they think, oh, I'm the only person in the world that feels this way, okay? And they go, thanks for sharing that. Me too. That's exactly what I feel. And all of a sudden there's camaraderie. There's that sense of, oh my gosh, we're buddies going through things together. I'm not alone. So the group situation does that. And then what I would see in a private situation is, firstly, we would talk about what happens in a group situation, but then you do talk about the private needs. You talk about what each individual needs, because although there's no I in team, okay, you as an individual are part of a team, and there comes a point where you've got to have your individual needs met, and somebody's got to listen to what you as an individual went through, okay? So again, you make this bond and you go on a journey, and as a psychiatrist, I get to journey with somebody for a part of their way. And so that becomes part of the therapeutic process there. And of course, I have techniques and psychotherapies that I use to get people through what they need to get through, okay? So, but that all gets based very individually, Brad.
I always wanted to ask a psychiatrist this question.
Yeah.
And now I have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you experience, when you worked with individual vets, did you experience them kind of living a life or living in front of a mirror and becoming more childlike? And, along with the insecurities, the anxiety, the fear, and those things, they're not associated with a strong man, or a strong person, a strong woman. Those are characteristics of a child. And did you see them in their worst time? Were they kind of just living out their childhood when it came to their insecurities and their fears and them not wanting to act or make changes?
Okay, so that's a very profound question, Brad. Okay, and I'm going to I'm going to go through it because it's a really good question. Okay, because firstly, I have to let you know what you already know, that all that I do happens behind closed doors, right? And that's actually really important, because when you close the doors and you know that nobody else can hear what's going on, you create a safe space for somebody to express whatever they need to express, okay? And the other thing that's really important is trust. I often call myself a trust doctor because, particularly in trauma, okay, it takes so much trust for people to be able to share what they've been through, okay? So you build up trust over weeks, sometimes months, before you get to a really vulnerable state. Okay, and then you kind of ask, is this like a childlike state? Well, okay, so let's take a 5-year-old child. A 5-year-old child is ideally in a family where they can be themselves, okay, where they feel totally safe, where they feel secure, and they can express their emotions, and they're going to be accepted for who they are, all right? Now, when you're an adult, okay, and this happens to all of us, we don't always think that we can express who we are or what we're feeling inside, okay? But after weeks or months of trust building in a environment that you can actually say what you need to, you do. You start to say what you need to. You start to express really difficult things. Sometimes you start to cry. Sometimes you act out your rage and your anger, okay? Sometimes you can actually feel joyful just because you're still alive, okay? And all of these things are safely expressed in a psychiatrist's office, as long as the door is closed, Brad, and the person that you're talking to is going to accept who you are, okay? So in answer to your question, yeah, you do get into childhood states, okay? But that's not to put it down. That's actually to say this is part of us, and we bury it deep inside ourselves because we're afraid that other people won't accept it.
The safe space, I think that's what you called it, the safe space, or they have to be completely confident that this isn't going to go, too far. It's not going to leave. It's not going to leave this room.
It's not going to leave the room. That's right.
Vets are very proud they're proud, and the whole honor, and say what you mean and mean what you say, and that's a big thing for all of us.
Yeah.
And so looking at, we only have a couple minutes here before we're going to go to break. And we could probably go a lot longer than, an hour. But my podcast is an hour, so we may have to have you back, in the future. When we get back from the break, let's do this. When we get back from the break, I want to kind of hone in on your thoughts, feedback, ideas, opinions of the sheer number of vets that we're losing to suicide. 22, is kind of the number we hear, but I know that fluctuates. Sometimes it's as high as 24, 26 per day. And I kind of want to get your take, your professional opinion on what's driving those numbers, and what are, what would be three things that we should be focusing in on in helping, bring that number down. There's a lot of stuff there, I know, but when we get back from the break, I'd kind of like to, get really into the suicide aspect of it, because I think it ties in to the trauma and the feeling lost, and living as a civilian and not really having a mission other than a job, just a job. And they need more than a job, because a job's not going to cut it for a veteran. They need more than that, something bigger than themselves. And a lot of jobs are not. So, I want to start off our second segment with the suicide numbers, get your take on that. And I also want to cover about your book, The 7 Love Types. And I think that's going to be very interesting. I know it's applicable to veterans, and we're going to talk about that as well. So let's leave. It's all great stuff. And like I said, we could go a lot longer, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we'll jump into the suicide numbers, and we'll, hear your professional opinion on why you think that is so predominant now, and why it's increasing. It's not decreasing. Even with all the help that's out there, we can't seem to get those numbers to come down. So,
okay.
All right. Stay with me. Folks, we have been talking with Dr. Christian Heim. He is a psychiatrist. He does live in Australia. He has been a medical doctor for 20 years, and 13 years of that as a psychiatrist. So, and he has worked a lot with veterans and trauma, and all the different issues that soldiers deal with. He has spent many years working with that. So stay with us, and we will be back after a short break. Welcome our new sponsor, Scars and Stripes Coffee Company. They empower veterans to build their own business using their e-commerce platform. When you purchase from Scars and Stripes Coffee, you are buying from a veteran, and your purchase directly impacts the men and women who have served our country. Do more than say, thank you for your service. Order today and empower a veteran. Use vet code Brad Richard at scarsandstripescoffee.com. That's scarsandstripescoffee.com. Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. They have great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you'll need to make a podcast in one place. Check them out and download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm to get started. Welcome back, everyone, to the Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard. We are speaking to Dr. Christian Heim. This is episode 50. And in part 2 of this episode, we're going to get a little deeper into your self-worth. And I have a quote here that I want to read. Your self-worth is in who you are, not in what you do. And so we're going to talk about self-worth and the fact that the point that it's in who you are. It's not what you do. It's not what you do for a living, or what you do in the world. It goes deeper, and it's connected to who we are as individuals. So we're going to talk about that. We want to get Dr. Heim's opinion on the outrageous numbers of veteran suicides that we are experiencing in the U.S. So let's get started with that with segment 2. Welcome back, Christian.
Thank you, Brad.
And we left off part 1, and I said in part 2 I wanted to get your take. So looking at those numbers of 22 to 24 veterans a day, what do you think's driving that? Why can't we get those numbers to come down? Because it seems to be getting worse and is escalating, and it's not going in the right direction.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to talk about why I believe veterans are at so high a risk for suicide. And it actually fits in with a theory of suicide that comes out of the 1990s. It's called the interpersonal theory of suicide. It was put together by Thomas Joyner, a psychologist. And he said, look, to be able to take your own life kind of takes 2 things. You have to want to do that, and you actually have to be able to do that. So I'm going to talk about the second one first. Now, to be able to do that, you've actually got to be able to overcome fear. You've got to be able to overcome pain, and kind of death has to be, how should I put it? You've had to have been exposed to it, and it's sort of part of your day to day, okay? And see, this is the thing about soldiers, people in the police force, street fighters, anybody who's been in armed combat. They have seen death, all right? They have seen pain. They have overcome fear. So all of a sudden, those people are at a higher risk of completing suicide themselves. Does that make sense, Brad?
Yeah, that is loud and clear. That makes so much sense. They are not predestined. That's not the word I'm looking for, but they're predetermined. They have some qualifiers.
That's right.
They have some characteristics and traits that make them more susceptible to choosing that route.
Yeah, that's well put. It's sort of like, that's right. If you have seen that, it becomes a possibility in your mind. Okay. When you have seen death, when you have seen destruction, when you have actually gone, and this has happened to a lot of people in combat, as you know, well, stuff it, I may die today, so I'm going to give it my all, okay? So that decision has already been made, okay? Even if you don't die, somewhere in the psyche, okay? So, and I don't think that people, and I'm in government agencies now, understand that veterans just are at that high risk for that reason. Everybody thinks, okay, sort of, you're not in the army now, you're a civilian now, so that means you're a civilian just like other people. Well, yeah, but you've had an experience that is not just like other people. Right. And who makes these decisions? Okay, people who work in offices, psychiatrists that have not had these sort of decisions to make in their own lives, because psychiatrists make lousy soldiers, right? Just like soldiers make lousy psychiatrists, okay? So we sort of find a way of equalizing to sort of say, you know what, let's work together for a better outcome. So that's the first thing, the higher risk because of the exposure. Is there anything you wanted to ask about that, Brad? Because it's the other thing that we can actually work on, okay? So people, why would somebody want to take their own lives? And basically our research, and research does help, shows there are 2 main reasons. One, somebody actually feels like a burden. Somebody will actually come up with the idea that I may be worth more to people dead than alive, okay? And that's a horrible place to get to, but people get to that place. And the second thing is that people feel isolated and disconnected, all right? And it's sort of like, if I'm not connected with people, well, who cares? Who cares if I top myself? And that's why I believe that the numbers are still going up, because we live in a really strange society, Brad, right? We are feeling disconnected from each other as human beings, and we're actually putting worth in what we do rather than who we are. Okay. And as cliche as it sounds, love can overcome that.
That's awesome sauce right there. Yeah, just to step back, the two things that that you mentioned, obviously the first is they're predisposed and they have the mindset, and they're more susceptible to that bad decision because of where they've been and what they've seen. And then either they don't feel like they would be missed, I'm worth more dead than I am alive, and then the disconnect. Now when you say the disconnect from other people, where they're isolated and they feel that they're by themselves, that takes the separation from the military, and that takes it to a whole nother level. And then when COVID kicked in, that separated the civilians and the veterans even more so, which heightened the risk and heightened the numbers to a degree. Okay.
That's the way I see it, Brad. In fact, people who have seen combat, all right, are disconnected to begin with, all right. There are people that tell me they relive some scenes in their heads every day, right? But they don't go around telling other people that they relive these scenes in their heads every day. So that means they're already disconnected, all right? They are going through something in their head that they're not sharing with the people around them. That's already a disconnect. When you add to that a COVID crisis where you can't get out of your house to connect with other people, if it's over a beer, if it's over a television series, or if it's over walking the dog, right? That just brings people to the brink of, I'm now more disconnected and more isolated, and we're heading in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. The previous episodes, and I'm a firm believer of the camaraderie and the networking and being together, coming together, or staying together, during the whole COVID thing and the separation and the anxiety that brought amongst civilians and teenagers and the veterans. It was something I was totally against from the very beginning, as well as I am now. And the separation, I wish it would have never started, but we need to break that, and we need to come back together again. And
that's exactly right. And the nice thing about that, Brad, is through this separation that we've all had, we actually appreciate each other more. Going to say hi to my neighbor or just pass by people and give them a smile, all of a sudden means a lot more. Okay. When you can't see the whole of your family, like I haven't been able to for months and months, okay, you sort of go, damn it, they're more important to me than I actually realized.
You don't know what you got until it's gone.
That's it, Brad.
To quote a song.
To quote a song. That's exactly right.
But it's so true. It's so true. Do you think there's other factors at play? I mean, the ones that you have mentioned so far are, out of this world. I think they're spot on. What other contributing factors do you think there are with those astronomical numbers? And more importantly, what do you see that we can be doing differently? Because what we're doing isn't working, obviously. And I think we need to make changes, and we need to do something quite drastic.
Okay. So the coronavirus crisis, that's something we're all going through. Okay. And governments all over the world are struggling with that. I'm going to have to leave that because I'm just hoping that we can all get to a stage where we don't have these lockdowns anymore. Okay. But when it comes to vets, to people who have experienced trauma, what can we be doing? Now, the difficulty is that the way that health services are set up, that there are actually a whole lot of services out there to help, but how should I put it? They don't cater to that side of our personality that is more stoic, that is the soldier in all of us. All right. There are like the stuff that you do, the stuff that I do, it all caters to the side that sort of says, hey, you can be the child inside you. You can show your emotions, okay? You can let go of the feminine side of you. If you're male or female, doesn't matter. We have a softer side in us, right? Now, the thing is that vets, they use the soldiering side of them to get through every day. And we're asking them to let go of that. And they're saying, you've got to be joking. That's what keeps me alive. I'm not going to let go of that. Okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's just not easy to begin with. So the way that we can improve our services is to say, look, when you start working with somebody here, you're going to be working with that person for a long period of time, okay? Because you're a person. You're not just a number. You're not just number 857 and we'll allocate you a counselor, and if that counselor goes on leave, bad luck, we'll find you another one, okay? It's got to be continuity so that you can create that space of safety to get to trust another human being. Trusting another human being that becomes another strong rope to get us through the torrents of the sea of life that we've got to get through, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If we can hang on to those ropes, then we will be safer, Brad.
Yeah, that is also spot on. I think with what you just said, I think it's so important that we continue to build leaders out of the veteran community, find them, identify them, and help them to understand that they have that leadership model within them, and they can implement those skills and the knowledge and the leadership aspect of the personality. They can implement that in a civilian setting, because in the civilian world, I've shared this with so many other people. It's like we need vets more than ever before.
Yes.
Because so many people are scared and uncertain about so many things, and we need those strong people, those pillars, those pillars to lean on, and we. It's like, well, who can you count on? We need you to stay alive because you're needed. You're needed now. You'll be needed tomorrow, and you'll be needed, a week from now, because you need to stand for something, and you need to stand with others. And so, is that enough to keep some of them alive and fighting? I hope so, but I think it needs to be more dramatic than that, and definitely not taking away, like you said, don't be that way. You're in the civilian world now. You can't be a soldier here, and I don't think that's productive. Like you said, you can't ask them to take that away. Like you said, I can't do that because that's what keeps me alive.
Well, that's true. But okay, so the very act of getting together with other people caters to the warm side of our personality. Okay, it caters, if you like, to the more emotional side of our personality. Okay, so let's say if I'm working with a vet and I'll make him a male, his spouse. All right, I will try to get to the stage where he can just say to his spouse, I relive things in my life every day in my mind that I don't talk to you about. Now, that doesn't mean that you've got to talk about what happened, all right? But just to say that much, all right, it leads to greater understanding for the spouse to say, oh my God, I didn't know that, all right? And so the spouse becomes softer, the relationship becomes stronger, and you create more of that safe space just within those two people to be able to cope with, hey, there are some emotions going on here that we may not understand. And here's the wonderful thing about people, Brad. People actually love to love each other and love to be understood. It's just so much damn hard work to get there sometimes, right? But that's what we all want. That really is what we all want.
That really is the bottom line. Even the toughest Marine, the toughest SEAL, the toughest veteran out there, they want to be loved in I guess in their way, or in the way that they need to be loved, and that can be a challenge. That can be a challenge to get there. That does lead us into, in the last few minutes of this episode, in this segment, tell them. I mean, it's been all great stuff, and I know we could go on a lot longer, but it's great information. And to the listeners of the Men on a Mission podcast, we will have Dr. Heim's information in the show notes. You can reach out to him, connect with him, and he has a lot more to share and a lot more insight and a lot more helpful resources. And so we'll have your links in the show notes so people can reach out to you. It won't be the last time that you'll hear him. By all means, you can reach out to him after the podcast airs. So, but I want the listeners to hear about your latest book. And we have probably 5 or 6 minutes left before we wrap up this content-filled, packed episode. And so tell us about the 7 types of love, and if you can bring it kind of back full circle and how it pertains, to my listeners, that would be great.
Yeah,
love to hear about
most definitely, Brad, because we got to the stage where we talked about the bottom line, okay? And the bottom line is that we all actually want to be loved. We all want to be able to share love, right? It just takes so much damn hard work to get there sometimes, all right? So as cliche as it sounds that love is the answer, there is something in that. And I sort of thought, okay, how are we going to be able to get to the stage where we can share love if we don't even know all about love? How are we going to be able to show it? And so there have been books on the science of love, but the science of love is quite incomplete. So what I've done is I've put together in this book the science of love. I do talk about the science of it, but I talk about the ancient Greek wisdom of love, which divides love into different types. And I've taken 7 of these types. And I talk about the theory of it so that people can understand. And I do it in a way that people can understand rather than get into this high-flown sort of language. And then I take really practical ways of showing all these different types of love to different people, because love with your spouse is one type of love. Love with your children is another type of love. The love between friends and comrades in arms, sort of is another type of love. And there's actually a way of treating strangers so that you're actually showing love rather than contempt from each other, right? And our present society, as you know, Brad, could use some of that. So there are all these different types of love. And when we understand them, then we'll be able to know how to show it. So that's what the book's about.
7 types. I wish we had more time to go through the 7 types, because that would be very interesting. When it comes to veterans, I would venture to say that a lot of us only know 1 or 2 of those 7. We haven't, maybe we haven't experienced all 7, and is one of the 7 types like self-love?
Self-love, that actually becomes the last chapter of the book, okay?
Oh, bingo.
Self-love and self-compassion, all right, is something that's really quite misunderstood, because in this me generation, a lot of people think that self-love is putting me above everybody else, okay? Whereas the way to do it is to see that you're part of the human race. You are who you are, not what you do. And when you show love with other people, you show love with yourself as well. And then you feel part of it. Then you feel that you're swimming with other people in a sea of torrents, but we're doing this together, and together we're stronger, Brad. And soldiers know that. Soldiers really know that.
That's a type of love that they do understand.
Oh, yeah.
And they probably don't call it that, because, some macho guys would go, well, I don't love you, but I'll die for you, but I don't love you. And it's like, so they do experience that. And like I said, they just have different names for it. But
and Brad, you hit the nail on the head as to why we need different words for love, because we have this one word, love, which all sounds mushy and romantic, and love is so much more. But unless we have these different words, these different types, like friendship is a type of love, all right? Belonging to a family, that's another type of love, okay? And so when we see these, then we sort of go, yeah, I experienced that, okay? And that's a type of love, and I can enjoy that.
Absolutely. Another one that popped into my head would be you can have the toughest guy out there in the world, and he can speak mean and he can speak tough and he's filled with testosterone. But if you hand him a small puppy dog,
Yeah.
or a kitten, and
Yeah.
if they look like the dog they had when they were a little boy, it's
Yeah.
like that looks just like my Snap or
Yeah.
whatever his dog. You'll watch that man's energy change dramatically,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
become very loving and nurturing and caring, and it's like a metamorphosis, and it's like they completely change. Their whole chemistry changes, right? And
That's
so,
exactly right, Brad. Yeah.
I'm a big supporter of service animals.
Yep.
Service animals are
Yep.
very important because it gives them something to love and care for and protect and defend and take care of, and
Yep.
it puts them on a mission to take care of that service animal, and it really saves a lot of their lives. So
It does. It
that's
does. And
another
actually, this
aspect
is
to it.
something. This is something that I talk about in a previous book called 5 Steps to Men's Mental Health, particularly where men have to get in touch with their softer side. All right.
Right.
Which they will let show with babies, children, and with animals, just as you're talking about. All right.
Wow.
And if you're a man or a woman, okay, we've got these sides that are kind of a male side and a kind of a female side, and it's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. But in a wartime, there's not much room for the softer side.
When you were laying that out, that last phrase or the last paragraph there, that I was like, that could be an entire episode for you and I to go through, because that's a hot button for me as far as the softer side and the harsher side. And we have the ability to bounce back and forth,
Oh yeah.
depending on
And the work.
yeah, depending on
And the work.
the stimuli that we have, what's in
That's
front
right.
of us, what we're experiencing.
That's
Wow.
right. And the work that you do, Brad, in your video course, your little me, who are you? What you're doing is you're actually encouraging people to get in touch with their softer side, the side that they were when they were children. Okay.
Mhm.
Because that's also where somebody's passion, goal, and dreams are found, right?
That's usually where they're found, and I cover an element of self-parenting, and that's something else that I cover about us becoming parents of ourselves, parents of our small children, and when we control those dreams and we can control the unlimited world out there in the eyes of a child, when we control that, then we tend to have a greater opportunity to move forward a lot faster.
Yes.
But self-parenting is a real important aspect. It's been fantastic. We need to wrap it up for this episode. Once again, I want to thank you for being on the episode and being on the Men on a Mission podcast. Great stuff. To my listeners, definitely check out the show notes. Check out Dr. Christian Heim's website. There are some other links there where you can connect with him as well. And, you're a true servant. You are very open, authentic, and, veterans kind of like it black and white. And that's what we got tonight. So I really appreciate that. Any last word for the listeners, and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight.
Brad, I'm going to leave you with a saying that my father gave me: you're a human being, not a human doing. So in other words, your sense of self-worth is who you are, not what you do. And Brad, it's been my privilege to be on the show tonight, and the work that you do is great. I hope a lot of people take it up and just move forward on their journey to wholeness in life. So thanks, Brad.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Heim. I appreciate you being on the podcast. I'm honored to have you, and just really great stuff. I love that saying, being human. Not you're a human being, not a human doing.
That's right.
Right. And
that's right.
that's catchy. and but it's powerful. It's powerful for sure. All right, folks. This has been the Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another exciting guest. Once again, thank you, Dr. Christian Heim, for joining us on the Men on a Mission podcast. And I will leave off the podcast like I always do. Love yourself, and more importantly, take care of your little me. Until next time, bye for now.
First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off and cadence out and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor free. We are proud to